Afternoon. We're only a couple of minutes away. So if you want to check the chat, you have the link to the website where we find the music that we listen to every day.
Listo, estamos
Okay, we're ready and we're live.
tiempo para iniciar nuestra
I think
sesión
it's
sobre
time for us to start
desarrollo
our new session
de
on open
AM
standards
CDT web.
to
Mi
make
nombre es
web
Israel Rosas,
services
soy gerente
and
regional de desarrollo
servers
para
more
Internet
secure.
Society
My
y
name is
estoy muy
Israel
feliz
Rosas, and I
de que
am
nos
the
acompañen
Regional Manager of
el día de
Development
hoy.
for Internet
Saludos a
Society.
todos los
It is a
ponentes
pleasure to
presentes
have you all
y como
here
pueden
on the
ver,
third day of our Latin American and the
quiero
Caribbean
ofrecerles
Chapters Workshop
presentes
2020. And I do remind you that if you want to
presentas en
go
redes
back to what we
sociales,
did in the
como
past couple of days, you can go to our social
en
networks.
Facebook
You can
como
find us on Twitter as
Isaac
ISOC underscore LAC, and then in Facebook in ISOC Latin America and the Caribbean, where you can find sound bites for the things that we discussed on Monday and Tuesday. And I'm sure that this session that we will have today with regards to the power and the influence in volunteering must have been really helpful for all the chapter members who are part of it. Now we will talk about web services, and then later on we will have other interesting sessions
quiero
too.
recordarles que
I do want to remind you that you can find the instructions in the chat to choose the proper language, because in this session we have simultaneous interpretation at the hand of our interpreter Son Nimit, who has been joining us in the previous sessions of the workshop and in other activities as well. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, you can hit the Q&A button that you can see over there in your taskbars in Zoom, and you can ask whichever questions that you want whenever you deem necessary to do so, and we will be answering them live.
decirles que
Now, I do want to take a moment to tell you that this particular presentation that I will be sharing with you
basado
um,
en
is based
una
on
presentación que
a
construimos
presentation created by Dan York. Dan York was the project leader for Open Standards
quiero
Everywhere.
contarles una historia
So I want to
que
start by telling you a story. This is something that actually happened to us.
muchos
Once upon a time, we realized that we had many websites. We know that we develop content in many channels. We have our corporate website, for example, with public information. So the content that you can find there normally, that you or anyone else who visits our website can find it, is
exclusivos para nuestra
public.
comunidad,
We also have
pero
exclusive websites for our community too,
los integrantes
which are the websites where the chapter members are
tenemos el
interacting.
sistema de
We
internet
have the Internet Hall of Fame website. We
como
also have several initiatives for routing security, which is the Manners website. For the Global Encryption Coalition, we also have another website. So, generally speaking, this was a map that we were able to create with the help of Dan York, and it enabled us to see how many websites we had.
que los
And that made us
estándares
become really aware that open standards are the fundamental blocks of an open internet,
cómo son utilizados
not
en
just
incluso desde
because of how they are used, but also because of how they're conceived, defined, and created in an open, collaborative,
trabajo hacia arriba.
and
Estos son
bottom
algunos de
to the
los
top approach. And these are some of the standards that we are referring to. And basically, what we are convinced about is that we want open standards to be everywhere. And that includes our own websites and our own servers, of course. That is why we took the efforts of Internet.nl as a framework. This is a platform supported by the Netherlands platform for internet standards. We are a part of that platform too, along with other actors from the Netherlands and organizations from that country as well, such as RIPE NCC and other allies in the community. And in Internet.nl, they are focusing on modern internet standards. They are divided into groups, if you will. One has to do with connection testing, other with website testing, and others with email testings. Just so you know, the code that they're using in Internet NL is available in GitHub under an Apache 2.0 license, and they are always willing to get extraction requests if you're interested. So if you're interested, you can check their documentation repository and continue collaborating too. Now, when we were able to see that we had so many websites available, we decided to conduct the test available in internet.nl. And you can actually do that too. You can go right now to internet.nl and you can test your own website or blog, and you can see how it qualifies with regards to the adoption of these open standards for web servers. We ran this test in March 2019, and these were the results. What we realized was that our main site was able to hit 100% marker in internet.nl. That was the only website, because we saw that apps.internetsociety.org only hit 94%. We had 91% in ixptoolkit.org, 94% in DNSSEC deployment. But in general, we realized that results varied. And I particularly tested my website, and I saw that I tested really low here, and I had many opportunities then to improve it. So after that, we went with our IT result. We went into a meeting with our IT team. We shared these markers over here, and we asked them, okay, is this something that we could deal with or solve? And they said, yeah, sure, we can. Give me a couple of days and we will solve this. Time went by, we kept on waiting, and then we waited a bit more. And then we asked, hey, do you remember about those web servers that we asked you about? And then we realized that this was a challenge for us. This was a challenge for the people in our IT team, and this is actually a challenge for many other server admins, because we realize that many people who operate websites want their sites to use the most recent standards, because this enables them to improve security, and they not just make sure that they are up to date with internet trends, but also that their websites are more secure. Nevertheless, and regardless of that, they really don't know how to do it. So those admins really don't know how to face the challenges ahead. But we were able to see that there's a lot of information about the standards, but the problem is that it's scattered around the web. So you can find it individually scattered in websites and discussion forums, but it's kind of scattered around the web. So we were unable to find one source on best practices. We were not able to find sources that were easy to understand, because a lot of the times the information may not be technical, but yet it might not be easy to understand. We also realized that the sources might not be updated with regards to the tools and the standards that are most recent. And also, we found that there was no clear consensus among the internet community with regards to what it means to have a secure server based on open standards. So we said, okay, we want to have a secure server and we want it to be based on open standards, but it was difficult for us to find a context of a consensus about the characteristics that that server needed to have in order to be secure. We also couldn't find reference systems or examples that would show how those standards and protocols could make web servers more secure working in collaboration. So we could find examples of the implementation of those standards at an individual level, but we didn't find any complete sets of standards being implemented. So we realized it was really hard to configure our own web servers. Something else that we talked about with our IT team was that they came to notice that we needed to do this in an easier, more accessible way for those sysadmins as it happened to them. Because just like they came across these roadblocks, people around the world come across them. And that is why our 2020 action plan includes the Open Standards Everywhere project, or the OSE, that's the acronym. And this year, the project had these four main goals. First, we wanted to build reference servers. What we wanted to do was show the community how a server that is secure looks like. Then we wanted to create documentation for our work. We wanted to show what the website looked like, but we also wanted to explain how to configure these standards. Then, after that, we wanted to promote those resources and share those resources, get other people involved, share the material, and then lastly, we want to lead by example. We don't want to show how things are done, but we also want to implement how things are done in our own websites. As I was saying in previous slides, I wanted and we wanted open standards everywhere, even in our own servers. Now, with regards to the framework was internet.nl. Nancy actually placed the link there in the chat. So if you want to test your own sites, you can do that. And Carlos Alfonso is asking over there and saying something really interesting. He's saying security is important, but it is also important to focus on usability. And that is something that I will mention a bit more afterwards. Now, as I was saying, the framework that we get from the internet.nl and http2.pro provides us with different markers. But also, we were able to see that we needed to keep our morality a bit high. A lot of people became discouraged when they realized that their own personal websites hit very low scores. So these are the top 25 websites of Alexa. So really, none of them are getting perfect markers, even in extremely famous websites. So now, about the scope of the project, it reaches only web servers. So we are focusing here in the security between the connections that go to and from web servers. We are not focusing here on the content of the websites per se. We're not focused on website design or on the content administration system, accessibility, usability, or even in test speed. We know that these aspects are important, and over there, Manuel Rodas is mentioning that about usability. And we know that these are really important aspects to bear in mind, but so far, this project has only been focused on security in the connection to the web server. Now, within the scope, we define three types of web servers: those that are self-hosted in a person's own server or virtual machine, and over there, you have an access at the level of command lines, and you can configure the server as you want it to be configured. Another web server that we focused on were those that were hosted with a hosting services provider. Here, you don't have access to the command line. You can, however, make requests for changes in configuration and modification by completing web forms. And then we also focused on servers using content delivery networks or CDNs. And CDNs are basically these things that you can see here that enable us to connect to websites through a network of border servers. As you can see here, this is not a direct connection between the browser and the server, but there is an intermediary there. And we realize that CDNs many times are a very useful option for people who don't have either the staff, the time, or the money to self host their own servers and configure them on their own. CDNs actually provide an advantage for us there because many of them actually provide services free of charge. Some of them offer certain services for a small fee. And here you can see some of the names of, that are the biggest names in the world of CDN providers. Now, as I was saying, we have several objectives. First, we want to build reference servers. First, we focused on 4 reference servers. Basically, we used Apache and Nginx. And then we differentiated Apache connected through a CDN and Nginx through a CDN or without it. We focused on IPv6, DNS, SEC, TLS 1.3, HTTP2, and HSTS. Um, and for TLS 1.3, we use certificates from Last Encrypt. So first, we built the 4 reference servers, and you have the links over here for those servers: Apache with and without CDN, Nginx with and without CDN. So if you want to take a look at that, you can go into those links. Now, after building the servers, we also needed to be able to document the way in which we were configuring those servers. What we wanted was to have clear documentation that was readily available and easily available for everyone. So first, we wanted to have step-by-step tutorials. We wanted to have videos showing precise configuration steps, links to test environments and tools, and also we wanted to provide which were the standards, protocols, and specific practices that we were promoting. All of that information is in the GitHub repository. This is something that we decided to do in the project in order to foster collaboration among the members of the community. So you have the link over there to check all the documentation. You have the entirety of the documentation there available for any of you that wants to revise it, modify it, change it, improve it. It's there for that. That's what we intend. We want to keep that documentation alive. We want to keep it open for improvement. And as a matter of fact, we've already gotten a couple of weeks ago some requests for comments. There are people who are interacting with the documentation and working on it actually, and that pleases us because in a way we took the first steps, but you as a community will probably improve this documentation because you might find a way to implement it in your websites that you want to share. Now, once we're done with that documentation, we will move all of that to our Internet Society website so that it's available in English, French, and Spanish. So do know that that's the case. Maria actually just shared in the chat the link for the Open Standards Everywhere information in Spanish because Maria Garcia was mentioning that the website was in English. And yes, it is in English, but there's also a version in Spanish as well. Maria just shared it with you there in the chat. But with regards to the documentation, right now it's in English in GitHub. It will later on be translated. Now, how can you help us then? Well, you can check the documentation that we have over there in the repository. This is what it looks like in the website. You have the links over there. so that you can easily access the repository, check the documentation, and colloquially speaking, play with it, um, because you can modify it and improve it in whichever way you want. Now, once we've created that documentation, we need to promote those resources and servers. We need to share that in different spaces. As a matter of fact, we've been lucky enough to talk to network operator groups in Latin America and the Caribbean, but also outside of that region. We've been able to participate in podcasts and webinars. We've written articles for several websites focused on open source software and development. So we were able to interact with the internet community and the web and security community to actually share this. Now, if you have specific ideas or if you want to spread this information and you need our help because you were able to identify an opportunity to promote these resources, you can write to me or to Dan York. Remember, Dan York is the leader for this project. So you can write to York at isoc.org or Rosas at isoc.org. Either Dan or myself will be there for you to interact, receive your comments, because we want to hear from you and know what your opinions are. Now, with regards to promotion, this is something that we didn't ask Apple to do, but it was a pleasure for us to see that the WWDC did do this, and they highlighted the importance of adopting IPv6, HTTP2, and TLS 1.3. And even if the scope of our project in ISOC does not relate or focus on having websites be faster, it is still a pleasure to see that Apple presented these results where they show that by implementing these specific standards, websites respond in a more quicker way. So that was really positive. We were pleased to see that, especially by a company that is so well known as Apple. Now, an interesting case is the case of Deloitte. They were able to conduct a study commissioned by Google with regards to the loading times and the latency for several websites. And what they realized in Deloitte was that if the loading time for a website decreases by zero point 0.1 seconds, the conversion rate grows by 8% for at least wholesale websites. So if that happens in traveling websites, then the conversion rate increases by 10%. And this is a measurement that is using Google Analytics. Now, this is not a study that we participated in. We did not commission it. But however, we do see with pleasure that actors and stakeholders in the community are showing the benefits or the indirect benefits of implementing these improvements. We want these improvements because we want to have an internet that is open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy for everyone. But at the same time, we are already seeing other benefits too. Now, Jorge Oscar Benetti says that this is a great project, and he asks, does the improvement of chapter websites depend on decisions of the chapter authorities? How do we deal with this? Okay. So, with regards to chapter websites, as it just so happens with any website, I think is that we depend on the decisions of whomever is administering the website. So if I worked in another organization and I saw that there was room for improvement in that website, I should talk to the server administrators for that organization, convince them, and then be able to implement those improvements. I mean, I can change the config and I can test my website if it's my personal blog, or if I was administering the websites for my friends, I could do that. But that really depends on the server administrator. So that depends on them. Anyway, if you have any more questions about that, please do ask. Thank you for your question, Jorge, by the way. Now, apart from all of these objectives that we had with regards to building the websites, documenting them, and then promoting that, the last thing that we want to do is lead by example. And I'm sure that you might remember the March 2019 slide. Well, we ran the test again a couple of weeks ago and we found many improvements. There are many websites over 90%. There are a couple of those websites that you can see here that require more improvement. And we continue working with our IT colleagues to improve those websites. But we've been able to see that we learned a lot throughout the project, not just among ourselves, but thanks to the collaboration of the community, and this is something that really satisfies us. Now, something else that was very interesting for us was that the OSE project was also part of the chapter's workshops for 2020. We had trainings at the beginning of the year for the chapters promoted by Nancy. This was a global program, and that was really interesting, I believe. And in particular for the OSC, we had sessions in English, Spanish, and French. And as a matter of fact, I recognize people who are here in the session who actually also participated in that OSC training. So it is a pleasure to see that you remain involved and interested in the project too. So there were 105 people who participated in the trainings. 77% of them passed, actually. And something that called our attention means that 53 chapters participated. So that was great attendance for us. We noticed that you were all very enthusiastic about the project. And now that Jorge was asking about improving the configurations of the chapter websites, we did realize that over 70%, 27% of chapters were able to improve their servers. Some chapters were unable to do that because they didn't have access to the servers, because they weren't actually the server administrators for the chapter websites. So, something that we learned out of that is that it is, in fact, necessary to properly coordinate and collaborate with website administrators, because if we don't collaborate with them, it is impossible to improve our websites. But I think the useful thing is for us to engage with the server administrators, not just from our chapter websites, but also from organizations that we work in or where we identify there's room for improvement. Because it is not just about having websites work more efficiently, but for internet to be open and secure. So we want to make sure that internet reaches more people, because half of the world population do not have connectivity. But at the same time, we want that half who do have access to internet can have an access to internet that is more and more secure. And because the internet is so decentralized and collaborative in its design, it requires for the collaboration of every single person operating the network and the servers, and every person who participates in the improvement of the internet, because we're building the internet day by day. So if you are a sysadmin or a server admin, you are actually contributed to the development of the internet and to building the internet every single day, which is why we all need to face the challenges as a community and not individually. Something else that we found among the chapters is that when we compare the measurements before and after the course, Brazil actually gets the highest results. So the Brazilian chapter has the best improvements. And as a matter of fact, they already had really high standards prior to the training. So they were doing really, really well. And then they were doing incredibly well. And then, with regards to the biggest improvement, that was the case of Ecuador. But without a shadow of doubt, all cases were interesting. 27% of the chapters, like I said, improved. But I really do want to highlight those two particular cases of Brazil and Ecuador. But still, there is a long road ahead of us. There's a lot of room for opportunity and a lot of things that we can promote among the chapters in the region. Now, with regards to how you guys can get involved, first you can test out your websites, personal websites, friends' websites, organization websites, chapter websites. If you know the server administrators for local ally organizations, you can test their sites, you can share the results with them, and not just indicate which are the rooms for improvement, but also explain to them how they can improve and implement those configurations so that they can offer more secure website servers. You can also promote and share the resources that we have available in GitHub. You can share this information as well, not just the information that we have in our Internet Society website, all the links. Nobody actually needs to authorize you to share the information. You can take that information, analyze it, share it, spread it, and you are all actually chapter members. But if you do know someone who might be interested in this, tell them to join Internet Society as chapter members so that they actually might participate in those trainings and these exchanges that we have of best practices, and for them to collaborate with the community as we always do. Because we are convinced that open internet is based on open standards. So this means having good open web standards for our servers. Now, if you have additional questions or comments, I can gladly answer them. Thank you, Edgar, and everyone else for your comments about the project. You have my email over here, rosas@isoc.org. Dan Yorks, who is a project leader, which is york@isoc.org. I will wait a couple more seconds just to see if there are any additional questions in the Q&A button or in the chat. I don't see that we have any comments. So, with regards to open standards everywhere for web servers, that's all. But I do invite you not to miss the third session for the LA Chapters Workshop, because at 7 p.m. UTC, we have a practical workshop to apply the critical properties of the internet that were identified in our project of Internet Way of Networking. These properties that are part of our toolkit to assess internet impact. So please do not miss that out. Our colleague Diego Navarro, the expert in public policies in the region, will be here. And then at 9 UTC, we will have another session on VUCA environments. So please join us. Also, check out our websites. ISOC_lag is our Twitter, and ISOC Latin America and the Caribbean is our Facebook site. So we're going live as well in our live stream and in our Facebook website. So please do not miss out our activities, and use the hashtag HiSoc Virtual. You can do that in Instagram if you want. Thank you.